Welcome to the Dad Show podcast. How y'all doing? Today is part 2.
And so again, the thing that always, like, as an adult reflecting back on these moments, especially when he did pass away, the reflection that I had was just like, what a great image of God the Father. Dad didn't solve the problems that I faced. Like, I didn't feel instantly like all my fears and anxieties were just gone, but when I needed to turn to someone, he was always there. And as an adult reflecting back, what a wonderful, so many people, well, I've heard this said before, when they have a bad relationship with their own father and they hear the words God the Father, and say, well, my dad did this, my dad did that. And I'm spoiled because my dad did a great job of showing me what the love of God the Father could manifest itself as. And he was a sinful, flawed human, but he was just such a steady, faithful character in my life as a father that is what I'm trying to live up to with my kids, right? And the example that he set was one of sacrificing material and earthly things to pursue his wife and his children and his God, God and Jesus Christ, and what a noble thing to be remembered by. What a wonderful, wonderful way for your children to remember you, right? And cancer and death and all those things, I always say, like, cancer does more than just kill you. It humiliates you. Like, I've seen multiple people that I love die of cancer, and including my best friend when I was 26 years old. He was 26 and he died of cancer. And it just is, and he was actually your cousin, but we were like, so close. And I watched it do the same thing to him that it did to my dad. I mean, it just kind of wears you down and turns you into a shell. And, the humiliation that you face when you go through that. I mean, it was a long 6 months and it was a painful 6 months. But the way that I remember my dad is jogging up and down the street that we grew up on called Nature Run, sitting down, after jumping in the pool after a run, sitting down to have dinner and just goofing it up, and then being so steady throughout the course of my life in the areas that I really needed it. So I could go on for another, 30 minutes about my dad, but he is my hero and the person that I aspire to be.
He sounds like it, man. He sounds like, I don't know if you've ever been through Tony Evans' Bible study, the Kingdom Man, or that series or not, but whenever you have sat here described him, like, that is exactly what I'm thinking of this whole time. Like, pure grace, pure patience, pure love, and was just, no matter what, he had his hands out ready to help anybody and show you the love of Jesus. And man, thank you for sharing that, because that's really awesome, man. And one of the things that I get out of that is continuing to help people, no matter what state they're in, like, whether they're poor or rich or whatever, just have those hands of giving because of how much fulfillment of Jesus he had in him to show that and bring that out and try to give that to other people and lead them to build God's kingdom. Like, that's really powerful, man. That's really powerful.
Yeah. And I always think back to, again, like, he got a business degree from Purdue, had a pretty promising potential career ahead of him. And, God didn't see fit necessarily to turn him into this super wealthy entrepreneur. We weren't a super wealthy family growing up. But the things that God blessed him with are the things that I think most people would trade wealth for.
That's what I was about to say. He was wealthy. He was very, very wealthy. Maybe not in a monetary standpoint, which is what people consider being wealthy. But from his standpoint, he was the richest man in the world. He had a beautiful family, was continuing to give, had God's strength and God's love inside of him, and was continuing to give that out. And that's wealthy to me, man. Like,
that's right.
You know what I mean? That's really, really powerful.
He loved this song called "The Measure of a Man." And I'm trying to remember who sings it, but if you like Google search "The Measure of a Man" song or whatever, lyrics, maybe you'll be able to find it. And, I just remember, like, my dad, similar to how I am, like he got choked up all the time. You know what I mean? Like he was always crying at movies and crying at songs and stuff. And I'm probably a little bit more like my temperament's a little bit more like my mom is, but I cry at stuff like my dad used to cry at stuff. And that song used to always kind of bring the tears out of him. But it was such a good reflection of like who he was and the things that really were important to him. And basically the message of the song is the measure of a man. Only God knows the measure of a man. Like we try to measure men by achievements that mankind understands, but it's only God who's able to see the heart and able to measure a man by, the scales that truly matter.
I sensed a lot in that whenever you were talking to relate back to my question, but I'm curious, what is one thing that you take away from your dad that you see yourself applying to your family today? Like I'm sure there's a ton, but what's one of the main things that you put into place with your family?
I love that question. I would say the number one thing that I try to implement that I learned from my dad is apologizing. And the power of an apology, I think a lot of people look at an apology in 2025 as either not worth accepting or being empty. I don't have to accept your apology. I don't have to forgive you. I don't have to. You're right. You don't. Also, somebody might look at an apology and be like, well, I need more than just an apology. I need, fill in the blank. And in some contexts, it's probably true. But to see my father humble himself at times where he was maybe 2% wrong and I was 98% wrong, especially as a boneheaded child or teenager, like the sweet irony of being a man is when you're, 18 years old, you've got it all figured out. And by the time you reach the age of 30, you realize you have none of it figured out. Right. So to know in retrospect that those times where we clashed and I thought I had it all figured out, that I was just so wrong, but him still pursuing me and apologizing to me and I don't know if I ever actually heard him say these words, but I say these words to my kids all the time. Because like I mentioned, like my temperament is not quite as like calm spirited as my dad's was. So I say these words to my kids all the time. I say, Dad needs Jesus just like you need Jesus. Dad needs Jesus too. Right. And it's because I mess up 100 times a day. And I want my children to hear me apologize to them when I do mess up.
And be vulnerable and show them that you're willing to admit it. Yeah.
Especially now that they're old enough to pick up on it, right? My older 3 are 9, 7, and 5. And so they recognize at times where it's like, well, you got upset with me, but I didn't even do anything wrong. Like that wasn't fair that you got upset with me for that, right? And so there are times where obviously I make the wrong sort of judgment call on what happened. And I got to go back to them and I got to apologize. And I got to say, you know what, guys, I'm really sorry. Dad messed this one up and Dad needs Jesus too. And I think, this is obviously a hypothesis because my kids are still relatively young, but I think the recognition that I can't do 100% of the things with 100% accuracy and perfection in the communication of that to them. Hey, I don't get it right all the time. My hope is that gives them the ability to reflect on moments of their childhood where they felt misguided or where they felt like, everybody has things from their past, from their childhood that they're like, man, mom and dad screwed that up. I wish they wouldn't have done this or, whatever. Like when I grow up, I'm never doing it that way. So my hope is that having the ability to be aware of that now and to communicate to them now, I don't get it right 100% of the time. And I'm going to come to you and I'm going to humbly ask for an apology, humbly ask for forgiveness in those moments. My hope is that helps them as they get older, show grace to me and some of the decision-making that their mom and I made when they were young. And that's probably the biggest thing that I try to, I again, like from a personality perspective, my dad and I, pretty different personalities, right? But that doesn't mean that I didn't look up to him, that I didn't love him, that I'm not so appreciative of everything that he did, and that I don't want to do that in my family for my family. But we were just different. We're geared differently. Like he would pass the opportunity to sit at the table with the president of the United States, and I would jump at that opportunity. You know what I mean? Like we're just different. So I know that I can't always do exactly what my dad did when it comes to parenting. But the biggest thing that I think I take away from how he influenced me growing up is that he was very apologetic at times, to a fault. And if I can be that apologetic to my children and not give them this notion that I have it all figured out and that my way is the law and that, yada, yada, yada. But if I communicate to them, hey, dad makes mistakes and dad needs Jesus, as they grow up, they're not going to run away from Jesus. They're going to embrace Jesus and recognize that it's because of his love that we're able to do anything good in our lives. So that would be, that's why I love that question, because it gives me an opportunity, I think, to kind of brag on my dad, but also to brag on, on my God a little bit. He's the perfect father. I'm not.
Well, that, it teaches your kids and anybody listening, like, you don't have to be perfect to talk to Jesus. You don't have to be perfect to go, and you don't even have to go to church, to find Jesus. Like, you can find Jesus anywhere and you can worship him and, pray to him no matter if you're at church or not. But it shows that you don't have to be perfect. Like, he takes the broken and makes them whole. Like,
sure.
And that's exactly what you're teaching your children by saying, look, I'm broken. I messed up. I screwed up. I admit it. One, you're taking responsibility for it. But number two, you're showing them that I'm not perfect, but Jesus is, and we can look up to him and ask for his forgiveness, just like I'm asking for your forgiveness. And, you're teaching them so many things there. I can't even think of the word I'm looking for, but you're teaching a lot there. And one thing I remembered you talking about your dad, and it's a good segue to where my next question is you said he was there. He was supportive. Like, he wasn't trying to fix the problem. He wasn't trying to, manipulate you or not manipulate you, but like lead you in a certain direction. He was just there. And so one of the biggest things that comes out of that I try to do with my kids is put my phone away, put the electronics away, like just be there with them. If they want to play a puzzle for 15 minutes, like, their attention span is going to change in 15 minutes and they're going to want to do something else. But that time that you're just there, even if you're not working the puzzle, even if you're not playing the princess, whatever the case may be, just your presence of being with them is so huge. So segueing into the next question is, you've got a podcast, you've got your job that is, that through every day is going on. You're at home with them. You also mentioned that, you teach some youth at the church, and I'd like to hear just a little bit about that as well. But right now the question is, how do you juggle, all that, but be present for your kids? And, let's not forget, you're in a marriage, so you have to be present with your wife. So, just a quick synopsis of how you juggle all that time and try to be as present as you possibly can.
Yeah. I love that question too. So, one thing that we do that I think is really, really cool, and we didn't even talk about this, so this is kind of neat, but each one of our kids, on the day of the month they were born, we take them on a one-on-one. So this month, all of our children are born between the 2nd and the 15th of the month that they were born in. So on the 2nd, I take my 2-year-old. On the odd months, I take him, and on the even months, my wife takes him. So on the 2nd, we take our 2-year-old. On the 8th, we take our 7-year-old. On the 12th, we take our 5-year-old. On the 15th, we take our 9-year-old. And then obviously, as our new baby grows, on the 11th, we'll take him out. So we try to take like a specific individual date, is what we call it, a date night with each one of our kids every single month. Right now, it varies between me and my wife because we can't both go. But so that's one thing that we do, is we try to take them out and do something special and unique with them. Now, God, my wife, she's her kind of idea of that is let's go to a park and let's run around and let's get some fresh air. My idea of that usually is like, let's go to a movie, let's go buy something, let's get, so they get kind of a good taste one way or the other of kind of what those date nights could potentially look like. But on those those kind of trips out or whatever, it's like a no phone, no, technology sort of thing. We kind of go and try to be very intentional with conversation, try to be very intentional just with that time. And again, like for parents out there of little kids, that to your point exactly, the attention span is very short. It's usually on to the next thing. Sometimes it is like, hey, can we go get ice cream? And here in Cincinnati, there's a ice cream place called Grater's. I don't know if you're familiar.
Love Grater's. Salted caramel chocolate chip is my jam.
Dude, they have I believe they have, I might be wrong, but they have like a coffee, almost like they call them chillers, I think, but it's like a coffee there. They mix in the salted caramel, chunk or whatever with the coffee. It's unbelievable.
Oh, man.
This is a little shout out, little, promo for Grater's, but
yeah, exactly.
But so there's a Grater's here in Cincinnati that has like a big indoor play place. And so one night I took my Zion as my 5-year-old, but we went over and played at the indoor playground for about 2 hours or so and had ice cream and stuff like that. So we take him out on that individual date. The other thing that I like to do is they're kind of old enough now to tag along on a lot of the out of the house sort of things that we do. And so because they are homeschooled, there's not tons of outside of the house activities going on besides maybe like church or maybe some family birthday parties or whatever.
Yeah.
So I always try to kind of get them out. And we lived in an area of town until about 6 months ago that was very like racially diverse. And I didn't grow up in an area that was very racially diverse. And to have, I think, that level of kind of like racial inclusivity and diversity was also just very healthy for them. So I was like, well, you guys come with me. Like, we're going to go to the hardware store. We're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to go somewhere. Like, just come with me, right?
Yeah.
Come and experience that stuff with me. And my dad used to joke, he used to be like, nobody ever wants to go with me anywhere. And it's kind of interesting because now every time I go out of the house, pretty much my kids want to go with me.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a little bit of that public school element that maybe was like, we just got back from school. We don't want to go back out. We want to veg or whatever. So that's one thing also that I try to do is I try to take them with me as much as I can to the things that I'm going to go do. And as the boys get a little bit older, or even as my daughters get a little bit older, if they want to go to the gym or if they want to go, I work out about 4 times a week. So if they want to go with me up to the gym or if they want to go play basketball somewhere, go to the park, go to a sports gauge, stuff like that. My hope is that we go out and do some of those activities together. In the home, my wife does a lot on social media. I do a decent amount with social media and with digital marketing for a living. And so one of the things that we are kind of working on is we don't do much like just like public TV. Now, we did watch a lot of football this year. I watched a lot of the NFL this year. So it's kind of funny. My son makes a lot of comments about these like scary movie commercials that'll pop up, and he'll be like, I don't want to see Smile 2, Dad. It looks too scary. I'm like, buddy, I don't want to see too either. But so we're trying to do a little bit more to kind of claw that sort of thing back, right? But they are constantly doing puzzles, constantly playing games, constantly making up their own things. In fact, we didn't talk about this either, but they made this book, and I know there are some people that might find this a little edgy, but they wrote a children's book called Farty the Fart. And so I posted about it on Instagram.
I hadn't seen that. I'll have to check that out.
The reel has like 1.2 million views. It's gone crazy. People are commenting like, we need this published and we want to buy this book when it's out and all kinds of different stuff. So
wow. We're
trying to encourage that level of kind of creativity and kind of just, like non-digital media type of stuff. So my wife is constantly taking them to the library to get books out of the library, to do more reading and to do more, things along those lines. Now there is the occasional, we catch them looking over our shoulder while we're on our phone too much, and we try to be self-aware of stuff like that. But, by and large, we try to focus as much as we can on the homeschooling side of things, creating their own world, creating their own stories, puzzles and games and stuff along those lines. And they're kind of reaching that point now where they're a little bit maybe able to engage in games like Clue and games that are a little bit more, like a little bit more involved, right? Yeah. So you kind of dive into a little bit more, hang on to that attention span for a little bit longer. but I know I've been going on for about 10 minutes now, but that's kind of what we try to do to try to pull things back from the digital media and focus on like, how do we stay in the present with them, doing games and activities and spending that one-on-one time with them. So those are some of the things that we do.
That's huge. That's so two things. Brandon Janis, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, he's got a small publishing company, or he's got a publishing company for small people, or not small people, but it takes a lot for for these big publishing companies to pull your book out. So I need to hook you all up together.
Please do, because I'm not kidding you. I filed the trademark and everything. Like I'm dead serious. Like, this is kismet, because honestly, like I was looking up how to self-publish, and I'm not kidding you when I say hundreds of people have said, if you publish this, we'll buy copies. So
yeah, I need to hook you all up together. And the second thing is, you talk about pulling away from the digital world. Like, one thing that we instill in our family is when we sit down for dinner.
Now, thank you for watching part 2, and come back tomorrow to watch part 3. Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.